2014. Mr. Chairperson?
I'll move approval of the minutes,
Move
please.
approved by Mr. excuse me, Mr. Gendron, seconded by Ms. Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. Moving on to the next subcommittee report is a report from the Curriculum Subcommittee, report and approval of the minutes of the meeting of Tuesday, December 9th, 2014. Chair recognizes the chairperson, Ms. Martin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. The subcommittee did meet on December 9th. Present from the school committee were myself and Mr. Leary. From the administration, we had Assistant Superintendent Abrams, Principal Jason McCreven, Principal Susan Mulligan, Carolyn Rocheleau, our Coordinator of Special Programs, Sean Rogers, who is the Site Director for the 21st Century Program at the Shaughnessy School, and Jacqueline Nolan, who is a classroom teacher at the Shaughnessy. Our first topic was a research proposal from Dr. Jesse Hines at the university, the Graduate School of Education at the University of Mass Lowell. He was proposing a research study that would allow us to link STEM activities with an after-school choral program at the Bartlett Community Partnership School. He did present materials, and I think they certainly were compelling, and the idea of being able to link music programming, that specific arts-focused music programming with science, technology, engineering, math. We've seen that link and seen it be successful. So this is, they are in a holding pattern right now, waiting for funding, but did come forth to get the permission of the school committee. The subcommittee did recommend this for approval, and I would submit it to the full school committee for that approval as well. So I'd make that a motion.
Motion by Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Rosikowicz to recommend to the committee as a whole to approve the research study of Jesse M. Hines. Further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Rosikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
7 yeas approved.
7 yeas, motion carries. Madam
Thank you.
Chairperson.
Our next topic of discussion for the subcommittee was a presentation from the Shaughnessy School, their 21st Century Summer Program. With some additional funding this year, they were able to expand their summer school programming from 4 to 6 weeks. They were able to add an additional 40 hours to their programming for students. They were able to present to us, I think, some of their artifacts, the projects that the kids were able to participate in over the summer. Really, really interesting stuff. It was great to see. Certainly the grown-ups that were involved in this were very engaged and excited about the work they'd been able to do. And it really, the kids' involvement and again, engagement with the subject matter was really evident in the video presentation that we were able to see. I think one of the key things that I was struck by was how this expansion of time really does have a significant impact on the summer loss, the learning loss that we're always fighting against in keeping kids, in school, working with the curriculum, and really keeping us from losing any ground, which is something that none of our students and certainly none of our, as a district as a whole, we can't afford. So this was a really interesting and it was the kind of program that as you learn more and more about it, you really kind of wished we all could go, because there was a lot of cool stuff that they were doing, both in terms of subject matter, focusing on ancient history, and also the I think really interesting technology part of it, where they were using a lot of the different technologies to create movie trailers, and it was a great presentation. It's one of the best things about the curriculum subcommittee. We always get to see some really interesting stuff that gets you excited about what's going on here in the city of Lowell. So that was submitted as a report of progress. Third topic was a presentation from Principal Jason McCreven on the status of the STEM Academy at the Rogers School, the first elementary level STEM school here in the district. Again, this was a presentation that I thought was incredibly engaging. Having been here at the beginning of this effort to build this school, I am incredibly impressed with how far we've come in a relatively short period of time. The project-driven approach that this STEM focus allows us is really exciting, and you can tell it's very exciting for our students, and gives them an opportunity to learn in a very hands-on way and a project-based way. So it's been super to see what they've already been able to accomplish at the Rogers. As we looked at the goals, and I think that they are important, we're talking about STEM goals, but we're also talking about your traditional requirements that we have for every student when we're talking about raising attendance rates, being able to incorporate some of the outside field trips and things along those lines. They're, what need to be happening at all our schools. Here at the STEM school at the Rogers, they're simply happening with a particular focus on the science, technology, engineering, and math. So I thought it was a very impressive presentation from Mr. McCreven. His excitement for the subject matter and for the growth of this new direction for our school, I think, was really palpable. And it again, one of those great things about the curriculum subcommittee. You get to see some really exciting stuff. Our fourth topic was the school-by-school data analysis. Ms. Scott wasn't able to attend, and this was a result of one of her requests, so we did postpone this until January 2015. I didn't want to move forward without the member being there who had initiated the request for information. Fifth topic was an update on our financial literacy grant. We did talk through some of the history, and I think we're all kind of aware of the grant that we had received here in the district, introducing financial literacy concepts into our freshman academy programming, looking to really move forward with that in the future. It has been, I think, established well, but we're certainly not there yet. And it's something that as they're looking to, the partnerships that we have with Jean Dark, which is a great partner here in our community, Jean Dark Credit Union, and their support of financial literacy efforts. We certainly are looking forward to those continuing and being able to support this kind of education and these kinds of this new kind of curriculum and building it really throughout our district. We've certainly started at the high school, but the real secret to this is being able to build it into all those lower grades. So that will be kind of how we move forward. Final topic was community services. Again, this was a request from Mr. Gendron. He was not able to attend the meeting, so we did postpone it to our January 2015 meeting, not wanting to move forward on something without that particular committee member present. I would submit that as a report of progress, and any of my colleagues who are in attendance, please feel free to add any notes. Thank you.
Mr. Leary.
Thank you. No, excellent presentation, Ms. Martin. Question to the superintendent through you, Mayor. On the third topic we covered was the STEM Academy. I think it was an excellent presentation. Some of the ending dialogue that we had regarding the future of the program, and also ties into larger picture regarding our zoning of schools. I think if we recall a couple of years ago, what we were working on was really looking at potentially realigning the zones in an effort to save cost with the busing. So I guess, and I probably don't have an answer for it today, but I'd like to get a timetable in terms of when we will have that kind of proposal before the school committee, or if that's something that's not on a front burner right now. I think with the cost of where we're dealing with education, some of the transportation issues, one of those areas we were discussing was the zoning. And I was kind of it's a hard topic to get into because it does have so many different trails that go off of it. Among them, how do you rezone? How are students affected by it? And the reason why this came up in the STEM Academy is because what's going to be the future growth of the STEM Academy? I think in terms of what Ms. Martin spoke about, the goals, particularly do we go to a K-8 school, which I think was initially, at least what I had envisioned when we were looking at it, is that part of that long-term goal. Right now it's listed as an open school within the district because that's one rate in terms of the STEM part that makes sense. Two is also really covers the population. So I think these are the issues that we really need to tie in, and probably like in January, February, in terms of what we're going to be looking at. I think the rezoning portion, which is very complicated, needs to start to be discussed and really drawn out in terms of, do we want to do it? Does it save any money? Does it make sense? How does it look? We would have to grandfather different students in who are already in particular schools. You couldn't simply disrupt someone in a particular school or if they have any siblings. But it's something, when we're talking about the goals of that particular school, that's part of that whole process. I did think it was an interesting presentation. I think one of the offshoots that I'm very happy with your administration on and the school committee, serving on the school committee, one of the best things we did is really bring back some of that science education into the curriculum with the science kits that are at different levels. You can notice the difference if you walk into any elementary school right now where we were 2 years ago as compared to today, where it was a simple curriculum. Now if your teacher can be very innovative with that curriculum, not only at this particular school, but throughout the entire schools, which I think, as Ms. Martin kind of outlined, it's imperative that all our schools have this creative, innovative way of educating, because that's the way you really get results. And I think with the principal you have at that school, you have an individual who will drive results no matter what type of framework that you have. And I think at the end of the day, that's really what drives a school's success, is really the leadership and the folks that they hire to do the job. But I think those are questions that we need to have that discussion much sooner than later, because it will have an effect in terms of how we do the goals for the STEM school. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. Further comments on the report from the subcommittee? I'm sorry, Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, as you all know, school years go by extremely quickly. So we have second graders. By the time we blink, they will be fourth graders, and we will have to have a receiving school going fourth into fifth. So we are looking at where we're going to put these children. You know that last weekend we got a response on if our K-8 kind of initiative, or if we're going to get that extensive space. So as you know, and as a result of the last facilities subcommittee meeting, we're talking about what we're going to do about space and what we're going to do for the future, which means what will be the STEM connection for these particular children and other themes that need to be developed. So those are all things we're thinking about. Transportation becomes a 5-year plan. What's going to happen with incoming children? What is the long-range plan? But looking at that is something that we're doing, and we'll be able to do more planning on that as the next year approaches in the budget cycle. We're actually now in 15, everybody. As we know, as soon as you hit December 1st, you start thinking towards that. So those are all things that we will be looking for your guidance and as we go forward. But those are all things we've been talking about.
No, and I appreciate, I know a lot of it you can't answer tonight, but it's something that we really, if you're rezoning schools, it's a long-term process, but we got to really start now. One last question, and you may have covered it, but is there an after-school program at the Rogers School? I mean, I don't know if we talked about it. I know we mentioned it, but I can't remember if there was or wasn't. Thank you.
All set. Further questions, discussions, comments? Motion to accept the report as a report of progress and placed on file by Ms. Martin, second by Ms. Scott. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to the next subcommittee report. We have a report from the Student Support Services Subcommittee, report and approval of the minutes of the meeting of Wednesday, December 10th, 2014. Chair recognizes Madam Chairperson Rostikowitz.
Thank you, Mayor. The subcommittee members that were present were myself and Committeewoman Kim Scott. Also present were Janine Durkin, Margot Farrick, Jane Moser-Canty, and Michael Ortiz. There were 2 items on the agenda. Number 1 was the Lowell High School Career Academy report, and the second item was the Chapter 222 report. I'm going to report out on the Career Academy report. However, I'm going to defer on the second item to Assistant Superintendent Janine Durkin. It was highly technical, tons of information, and I don't think that my report out would really do it justice. So Margot Farrick presented a report in response to a motion by my colleague, Mr. Leary, which was a request of the superintendent to provide Lowell School Committee and Student Services Support Committee the status of the current staffing, student enrollment numbers, number of students moving from LHS to the Career Academy, and the current management structure of the academy. Highlights of the presentation included the staffing structure, which includes a coordinator, a behavioral specialist, 9 teachers, a security guard, and a clerk, which are all full-time. Additional staff are either shared with other buildings or hired on a part-time basis, and they include tutors, allied art teachers, a nurse, and a school resource officer. To date, there have been 78 students enrolled, with 64 of those students making up the freshman and sophomore classes, and also to date 41 students who who have been transferred from LHS to the Career Academy since August 2014. The recommendations from the subcommittee were to consider including comparative student data from year to year in future reports, and I would go to number 2, which would be Chapter 222.
Because it's my motion. I apologize.
Mr. Leary?
I wasn't able to make the subcommittee meeting, so I didn't have a chance to go through the presentation. But I do appreciate you putting the work forward. I guess the question, Mayor, through you to the superintendent or assistant superintendent, the second part of the academy, and the name eludes me right now. It's like the
Engagement
the
Center?
engagement center. What is the staffing on that right now, and how are we, and where are we with that right now?
So the Engagement Center is up and running. The staff that are staffed for the Engagement Center, it is the monies that were originally for students who are out on long-term suspension. Those students are also apprised of the services at the Engagement Center. So we're not spending additional monies as a district. We're utilizing our monies and pooling our resources together so that we can provide not only our students who are out on long-term suspension additional supports, but for our students who are struggling at Lowell High School, another viable option. So that has been up and running since December 1st, and the staff that are in place are every day. There is an English teacher, math, science, history, and a special ed person. These are people, all teachers from Lowell High School. We also have a social worker to do an assessment of the students. We've actually found that to be extremely beneficial. They're hooking up children with, just today, we got word that one of the students who's been out on long-term suspension really needed some support and counseling. And they were able to hook them up with the health benefits that they needed to get that support. So that is in place, and at present we have 9 students on average each day, Monday through Thursday.
So just a quick follow-up. So that's during what time of the day is that, just for my own edification?
That is from 3 to 5 every day.
So these are students who are suspended long-term? And
These are students who are either suspended long-term, or this is a pilot project with the, under the direction, we've gotten direction from the DESE and our staff council, and we've set up it's a pilot project that's being overseen so that a student who is 16 years of age or older can opt in, and they would sign along with their parent an approval for that. The goal of this is not for it to be a long-term option for students, but an option for us to really take some time and assess where the student is, get them their college, their high school required courses, have them have some success in those classes, and then be able to direct them to either back to Lowell High School for the remainder of their high school career, or another option to get their high school diploma through some of the agencies we're collaborating with.
fantastic. So it's a good pilot that started in December, and probably in the next few months we'll get some good feedback on it. Back to the Career Academy part, I know there's 78 students enrolled through you, Mayor, through the superintendent. I guess most of those students are coming out of what school? Out of the high school or out of the middle school?
So in May of last year, right before the close of school, what we did is we met with the coordinators of the Bridge program and the Cardinal O'Connell, as well as staff from Lowell High School, from our freshman academy and our student support services and discipline and operations. And we had a very detailed process in which we reviewed all of the students at those schools and made recommendations for the students for their best placement. So those students could have been targeted to go to Lowell High School. So of those students, there were 21 students who moved to the Career Academy. Since then, there have been, and I want to get it right for you, I think it's an additional 41 students that have been transferred to the Career Academy from Lowell High School directly.
So would it be safe, and I apologize, I wasn't able to attend the meeting, so I apologize again for the meticulous questions. Is it safe to say that the 41 students that made the transfer, if you will, to the Malloy Alternative School, that those students would have been the same in the old program that we had prior to it? The same type of issues, the same type of challenges that you faced at prior to setting up the Career Academy?
That's correct. Those students are having difficulty
Number of issues, so whatever those
in the
issues may
regular
be.
setting.
Okay. And the only, I guess the follow-up question to that too is in terms of, two quick questions. One, is there anybody on a waiting list to get into into the alternative program? And the second question is really in terms of the management. Do we have a full-time director? Now, I know we hired an individual, and that didn't work out, so they left after a couple of days or weeks. And a part to that, did we do an outtake interview to find out what those issues might have been? I don't need to know them, but just as long as we're following up with it in terms of the management process.
We actually did. I did conduct that interview with the staff member, and we can discuss at a later date, but I did discuss those concerns. We do have an interim coordinator in place at this time, and our director, and that's why there was a delay in the engagement center starting, because our director needed to be freed up to be able to run that program after school hours. So yes, we have the director in place, facilitating not only the engagement center, but all of our alternative programs, and are working in collaboration with our special ed director for our therapeutic day programs. And so that is in place. And then we also have the coordinator.
So just and I know it was so many questions at once, so I apologize. But just, I guess, the last part of it in terms of the number of students, is there anybody waiting? In other words, do you turn around to say to the high school, if they have a particular individual, I need to go into that program, do you say, no, we don't have a space?
So at this point, the way the referral process works is they have discipline and placement meetings aligned with the end of each quarter. And at the end of that quarter, those students, there's a meeting with the coordinator and the director of the alternative program and Lowell High School staff, and then the recommendations to move the students forward.
So there wouldn't be a reason to deny someone because of lack of space. It would be an issue over, is this best for the student? Is that the way to say it?
So at this point, we can handle up to, I think it's 110 maximum students at the Career Academy.
So 78, so you're pretty good right now.
Right. So at this point, we have 78 students. The challenge that we have, though, with the limited number of staff that we have, is that the goal of the program is to maintain 15 students per classroom, and right now some of our classes are up to 19 and 20. So we know that's not the optimal level, but in order to be able to provide the services for our students and the classes, that's what we have to do at this point.
Further questions, comments? Ms. Ross-Sikowitz?
Ms. Durkin was going to present on Chapter 222. Thank you.
Okay. So I also have staff counsel for the Lowell Public Schools, Mike Ortiz, with me, who, together with Jane Moshe Canty, have worked intensively on the Chapter 222 law that took effect July 1st, this past July. So I'll give you a brief overview, and what you have in your packet is the whole PowerPoint presentation that we walked through. We had some really great discussion during the meeting regarding the aspects of the law, but I also want you to know that as part of the motion, the motion by Mr. Leary was to look at what other districts were doing as far as interpreting the law. So we I have materials from 10 other districts, and I welcome anyone to review all of them. They're right up here. But if not, what I have provided you as well is a reference guide. So in respect of the other districts that we reviewed, instead of labeling each district, I will refer to District 1, District 10, District 8. So, but you have the information in your guide as to which districts I will be referring to. So, with that being said, Chapter 222 is provides several provisions under the law. It addresses discipline, it addresses attendance, and it addresses dropout prevention. So the pieces that we presented to the subcommittee were around the area of discipline. The attendance piece is addressed through our newly adopted attendance intervention plan that we're monitoring this year and working with schools on implementation. The dropout prevention piece, we have revised the disengagement policy for procedures for Lowell High School, and we also have an active dropout prevention task force that meets regularly. Actually, we'll be meeting tomorrow to discuss some of the best research that's out there and to formulate some plans for the district. So as far as Chapter 222, it provides an additional, under Mass General Law 71, it adds a new section, and that section is 37H 3/4, and it establishes specific requirements for all suspensions. So that's different from, those requirements are different from what's covered under 37H, which is for students who have dangerous weapon or possession of a controlled substance, or 37H1/2, which has to do with a student who may be charged with a felony, some kind of a crime. So this new provision under the law, the whole premise behind it is to reduce, to eliminate actually zero tolerance policies, to reduce the number of suspensions that for students being out of school. And also parts of the provision of the law also have to do with making sure that when a student is out of school, that they do have educational services provided to them, and they're guaranteed their academic ability to make up their work. So those are some of the provisions under the law. Under the new law, there are a number of different suspensions that are covered. There's in-school suspension, which is when a student remains in school, and that is must be under 10 days. And that would be considered an in-school suspension. The child remains in school and has the opportunity to make up their work. Now, the next piece of the law talks to short-term suspension. Those suspensions are any suspensions that are under 10 days, and that is when a child is removed from school. That child has the right, again, to make up the work, and there has to be some kind of an academic plan put in place for that child so that they can be successful upon their return to school. The other piece of the provision is an emergency removal. Emergency removals are when the school deems that a child is a danger in some way. And the law doesn't really specify what, that is, but we, through the work with the attorneys, and we worked very closely with our district leaders to make sure that that everyone was on the same page about what an emergency removal was. And those emergency removals are not to exceed 2 school days, regardless of the grade, and the superintendent in this case, and me as her designee, are informed of this, and that's one of the requirements of the law as well. Then there is a long-term suspension. A long-term suspension is defined as the removal of a student for more than 10 school days. Now, the nuance with the law is that a short-term suspension may become a long-term suspension if it tallies up to 10 school days or more. So that's a very important thing for our administrators to manage, to monitor. So one of the pieces that we did as a district is we created forms that, we're keeping our fingers crossed, are no longer going to be in draft form come January 1st. And because we've been getting feedback from our administrators on them, but we'll keep a running record for our administrators so that they're in tune to when something becomes a short-term or a long-term suspension. So, so those are the components of the law. Additional provisions under the law require the district to notify the DESE, so we've got to provide this information to the state, and the state will monitor our suspensions and provide feedback to any district that they feel needs some additional support based on the numbers of suspensions and other data that they look at regarding minority status, and if there's any issues relative to, are we disciplining certain groups of students more than others. It also requires principals to develop school-wide educational plans, and those are the plans that I referred to ensure that a child, when they're out on suspension, actually receive the services, their educational services while they're out. So we looked at a number of different school districts, 10 different districts, several of them urban districts, very similar to Lowell, and then we also looked at some surrounding towns to see how they interpreted the law. So Lowell we allow waivers. The law and the regulation is silent on those, and what that means by a waiver is that if, under the provisions of the law, it stipulates that an administrator has to make at least 2 attempts to contact the family before suspending a child. So if what we put into, with the guidance of our council, is we put in a provision that you could provide a waiver. So if you get in contact with a parent and they refuse to come in, or they can't come in for a hearing for that suspension piece, then we would say to them, do you waive that hearing right? And so we put that provision in the law as well. I mean, in our policy. Lowell specifically indicates that parents should be notified of the rights to an attorney and to present evidence and witnesses, and we found that there were other districts that did that as well. And Lowell developed standardized forms that I alluded to, so that from school to school, we're using similar forms that mirror the regulations under Chapter 222. So as far as the 10 districts that we reviewed, all 10 districts allowed due process rights. There were some school districts that just verbatim in their handbook had the law exactly as it was, and nothing else as far as provisions. Districts 1, 2, 4, 6, and 7 exceeded the law in some way, similar to Lowell. Of the 10 districts reviewed, districts 1 and 4 were identical to Lowell. However, District 1 had even further additional things that were part of the policy. For example, they allowed appeals for short-term suspensions, which is not part of the provision, and also they provided the families with a list of attorneys that parents could access. So districts 2 and 6 Also had rights that allowed witnesses to testify similar to Lowell. District 7 required witness statements in writing in advance, and afforded principals some discretion to what due process would be depending on the disciplinary offense. We were concerned about that specifically because then the equity piece could be quite problematic with that. Districts 1 and 4 and 5 also had greater appeal rights than Lowell. Districts 1 and 8 provided forms, just like Lowell does, to support, and District 10 mentioned due process, but had nothing of Chapter 2 in their handbook. So there's a lot of information here. It was a longer meeting than we usually run, but we had so much information to provide under this new policy, so I welcome questions, and as I said, we also have Staff Counsel Michael Ortiz here.
Thank you, Ms. Durkin. Mr. Leary?
Thank you. First, thank you very much for the effort and the work. Attorney Michael Ortiz and I had a good 20-minute discussion in the hallway. Again, I apologize I wasn't able to make the meeting. You know, this is my motion. I did make the motion because there was some concerns from vice principals and different administrators throughout the Lowell community that were concerned about not only the law, which they obviously can't do anything about, but the way we're implementing the law. So I wanted to make that motion to begin the discussion. You're right, it is voluminous. It's came upon us pretty quick in July. I think a lot of the steps that we are really ahead of the other districts, and from what I gather from talking to your administrators who implement this, Madam Superintendent, and from talking to Michael Ortiz, the district was really doing a pretty decent job prior to the law, and the law is really enacted because you have some other districts that really don't treat it folks as fairly as they should, nor do they keep their documentation of what the suspensions are in an appropriate fashion. The dialogue that Attorney Ortiz and I had in the hallway was really relative to the way this is being interpreted for the folks who have to do the work. And I really appreciate him taking the time. I mean, I think it's going to take more than one meeting to go through and discuss it. Part of the issues really were revolving around if I had to suspend a student, say it was in a fist fight who threatened another student. The way some of folks are looking at it is that I couldn't suspend him unless I got in contact with a parent, and then the parent could actually come back and say, well, you know what, I want a hearing, I want witnesses, I can't make it in the next 2 days. And what our attorney Ortiz was pointing out to me is that there's two different steps that I'd like to discuss more, and probably another subcommittee meeting, two additional steps that we recommend at that point if you feel there's a danger. One, emergency hearing is Assistant Superintendent Durkin went into, that you could do that immediately. The second really is, and I think this is something that I think that we need to make sure our administrators are understanding, that if you feel there should be due process. We've always notified parents when their child's being suspended. It's not like all of a sudden, Jim Leary's got suspended and, Mrs. Leary didn't know it. That didn't occur before, so that wouldn't change in this legislation. The due process would be in a more of a realistic time frame. And I think that needs to be articulated, and I got to understand it more myself, other than what Attorney Ortiz outlined for me in the hallway. I think the legislation's intent makes sense. I think the implementation of it may require us, especially in the middle schools, to hire more staff if there are issues, or at least part-time staff, because the forms alone are a bit of a challenge. And I know if you look at them quickly, they don't look like much, but when you have to fill them out and then make contact with a particular parent, it does become more of a time-consuming event. The overall goal is obviously to educate students, not to become a pathway to prisons. I mean, I think we're all here to do that. I get it. But it's also to make sure that if someone, for example, does an infraction that in society would be considered a criminal event, hitting another human being, that we are able to work in a way that provides safety to our other students and faculty. And I realize this isn't something the administration created. So I know that the motion's a pain in the neck for me to you, and I appreciate that. And I realize you didn't create it, and it's something we're going to have to live with. Although I think what we need to do really is have more discussion with the committee. Reading through this, you got to do it more than once. And then having the discussion I've had with Attorney Ortiz, who I think incidentally is a good person to debate, and I enjoyed that 20 minutes in the hallway. But there's got to be more detail for the committee, and I think really more for the local folks who are actually implementing it. My concern is, and I just want to end with this because I think I want another review at it. And again, I appreciate what you did. I think it's a good initial start to educate myself, but also to educate the folks that have to do the job. I just want to finish by just really saying, my concern is that we are going to hamper safety in our schools in the long run. I don't think that's the intent of the administration. I don't want to make sure I see that. We have to make sure that we're giving the support to the folks that are implementing 222 so they can be effective. And it is ironic that it's 37 3/4 because the law itself is significant, it's voluminous, it's a drastic change from where we were going. Although for Lowell, we were doing a lot of it anyway and doing it well because our folks and the support that we had did it well. So I appreciate beginning to learn. I apologize that I will want to take another look at it and keep discussing it over through the next couple months. I think we need to do that as well to the staff concerning emergency versus non-emergency versus threat versus danger versus other types of situations, because that's significant. If I get, if my child gets punched in the face, that's danger. And my kid will not be in a classroom with somebody who does that. And I don't think that's the intent, but I think the explanation to the staff in terms of how to handle that is important. And more importantly, probably educating me, which is probably a great job for you to do. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. Ms. Ross Sikowitz.
Okay.
Ms. Durkin?
Thank you. No, actually, my only comment really was, it was fascinating to see the comparatives to the other districts. And we had, comparative districts were rather large and some were very small. So I look forward over the next, year, because I know that DSE wants us to submit our policy and what we have in place, and I'm sure they're going to compare and contrast and make recommendations. And, it would be, I think, a benefit to all of our communities to have something much more standardized. For instance, one district had just a small, tiny paragraph that didn't allude even to Chapter 222. So it's just lots of disparities in terms of how that's written across school districts. But I look forward to, seeing how we can improve it, perhaps taking the best of other districts and incorporating that into our policies and giving more direction to our staff.
Just, one more.
Excuse me, Ms. Durkin?
I'm
And
sorry.
then Mr. Leary.
I just wanted to speak to, both of you mentioned the supports to staff. So prior to July 1st, we provided, before the law even came into effect, in draft form, we provided a whole training to staff around what was coming. And we afforded them an opportunity to troubleshoot and ask questions around the law. Once the law became in place, we also, before school started, provided a half-day training for our district administrators, and we videotaped it at their request so that they could review it over and over again. If they wanted to see me on camera again and again, and Attorney Ortiz, that was okay with us if it was going to provide them the support they needed to understand the law. At that time, all three of us said, we know that this is challenging, pick up the phone. And I know that Attorney Ortiz and Attorney Moshe Canty have been in buildings, holding hands, trying to sort through things and work with staff on a regular basis for that. The other piece that we developed, because the principals and our assistants really want to know, okay, so under short term, What do we do now? So flow charts were developed for all of our administrators so that they could just look and follow the process. We established also, which every single administrator is invited to, we established an advisory committee. And so we meet regularly. We have another meeting with that advisory committee to actually share with them what other districts are doing next month. And all administrators are invited to that process. During our last advisory meeting, they asked us to start to think about some alternatives for students alternatives to suspension. So if not suspension, then what? And so for many of our schools, it is a challenge not having in-school suspension resources in their building. And with the exception of Lowell High School, having those staff actually there. So that's one of the things that we're talking with our staff about. How can we provide those supports so that a child can stay in school but also be safe? So I just wanted you to be aware of the different supports that we have put in place. Both Attorney Ortiz, Moshe Canty, and myself have been involved in a number of statewide initiatives to gain more information. Urban Leaders Network, meeting with the juvenile courts. So there's a number of things that we've done to make sure that we're implementing as best we can.
Thank you, Ms. Durkin.
Just,
Mr. Levy?
I apologize, just, that's
Ms.
part of what
Martin.
I was talking about in terms of support. I think when you get a law coming in, you're always gonna have time frames to work through it, and there's gonna be that session of ambiguous points, and you have to work through them, and I appreciate you putting a committee of folks that are on to review it. That's a good step. The other part is actually the physical implementation of making the phone calls. Is it going to be the assistant principal at a particular middle school? Is it going to be a clerical person? For one, I don't think we should have clerical people making those calls. So you're going to burden the administrators, and additionally, when you're talking, and again, I don't know, we got to work through the problem. That's kind of what I'm talking about. That's going to be additional burden on some folks. When you're dealing with 2 administrators in a system with 550 to 600 kids, and we're asking them to be an additional with evaluation piece of teachers, of helping kids learn, this is something that we need to take a look at. I appreciate that you have legal counsel involved. I think it's worth the dollars that we spend in it because we save money long term. But it's the day-to-day actual implementation of it that's going to cause time for the folks that are already taxed. And I don't know if you can even answer it right now, but I think that's what we need to think about in terms of how do we do that for vice principal at the Stocklosa? How are we going to support you in actually doing the work? Because now it's an additional burden where you already were taxed over where you should be, quite frankly.
So that's why the advisory board is set up.
Chair recognizes Mayor Elliott.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I think this was very helpful, both the first report by Ms. Rosikowicz on the Career Center. I actually had an opportunity to speak to a group of students this past week, and they were very engaged, and they were, to me, they were looking for some answers. They were looking from some directions, and I'm glad I could just spend a little bit of time to do that, but I thought it was very well run. Knowing the challenges we have in the district, it was an option for some kids that are troubled and need some help. So I just want to comment to you, Madam Superintendent, on how impressed I was, first and foremost. But secondly, I think the implementation of this 222, learning about it not only here tonight, but reading, is significant. I mean, there are some challenges in the district, and it is good to know that we have exceeded those standards in other districts. But zero tolerance should not be misconstrued in this law as to how we're going to act in the schools. And I think the resources that this district spends, and we have taken appropriate actions, certainly now and in the past, to provide resources to students so they will continue to learn, still have other opportunities at several locations now, the Cardinal O'Connor, McHugh Alternative School, the Laura Lee, the LeBlanc, and the Engagement Center. So there are plenty of opportunities. I happen to agree that an in-house suspension is probably the best suspension. They should be given the opportunity, but suspending some of these students, then when they're out for 10 days, is what they want. Or I shouldn't say what they want. It's not as bad or as punitive, if you will, as to stay in school and learn. So in these schools where there are challenges, is there some central location that this advisory board is looking at to provide the support services, so we're not having each principal having to deal with, individual students throughout each individual school? Or are the institutions that we have in place adequate at this point to serve these students?
So those are some of the discussions that we are having, and that's one of the areas that we're going to focus on at our next meeting in January with our building administrators to talk about what are those challenges. Just as Committeeman Leary asked, what are the day-to-day challenges that people are facing? And so that we can, and that's what we did at our last month's meeting as well. So we're going to be looking at what are your most difficult challenges, and then trying to come up with some solutions. And some of those solutions, quite honestly, may impact our local budget. If to make some recommendations to be able to support schools so that they can provide those in-house opportunities for students.
I mean, I like the fact the provision is that there is a requirement that you reach out to the parents once or twice, but sometimes the parents are at the point where they don't know what to do either. And, that's why we have these other options and alternatives. I think it's the last step, last measure that I'm sure the district and the superintendent and the principal and the teachers want to go through, but that's part of society, and you have to move in that direction. So I think it's a good law. I think we have to be careful, and the implementation is important. But we know on a day-to-day basis we have some, we have to provide the safety, and there are kids that are going to put other kids at risk and jeopardize and affect the learning opportunities for those kids in those classrooms that want to learn. So first, again, the Career Academy, I think they're doing great work. And but secondly, I think the approach that you're taking to provide options for this in-house suspension is the approach, is the punishment that may make a difference to these students. They're going to continue to learn, and they're going to realize they're going to be held accountable for their actions. So I want to commend you and your staff, Madam Superintendent, Ms. Durkin, for this approach. I think it's a good approach. There's zero tolerance in the classroom. And that's a message that has to resonate to these youngsters too. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Conway?
Thank you, Ms. Martin. I think the conversation has been extremely interesting and very informative, and I want to thank Ms. Durkin for coming forward with this report, because again, it does get complicated. But I think when the dust settles, what's important to know is that the district here in Lowell has been ahead of the curve, and that we are complying with that law, certainly for the most part. So I think that's important to know, and I think that when you take a look at the other towns and cities, you'll see how far behind they have to play a lot of catch-up, and we're really ahead of that. Which I think is extremely important. And as my colleague, Mr. Leary, just mentioned about safety, and I think there's no doubt about it, that all administrators and staff and family and so forth, they want to make sure that what goes on in that school is extremely safe. So, I think we certainly have to be very, very cautious as far as that's concerned. The in-house suspension, that certainly is a great alternative. We've used it, of course, down the high school for a number of years, and I think that the individuals that deal with discipline all the time, we would prefer in-house. The frustration that quite often came up, and I think you, Ms. Durkin, realizes it, that, we would have 3 or 4 people that we would want to put into in-house. There were no slots, and it became very frustrating. And before you know it, you were booked a week down the road. Well, that's too late. That's the problem with that. So I think that's something that we really have to work on, because if we have to get somebody into in-house suspension, we have to do it. I think the other situation that's extremely important is that when we're doing this district-wide, we're getting that message that's extremely consistent. That is going to be paramount, because even though we have 14,000 students, 14 plus, and we deal with a lot of parents, they know what takes place from one school to another. And that's where the consistency has to be right on target. Because once you find that one school is doing something a little bit different than the other school, then we're running into now we're running into some real problems. So again, I think this discussion has been great. I look forward to future discussions dealing with the law of 222. But again, I think the encouraging part is that we're, I think, right on target, and I think you people certainly have a handle on it. Thank you very much.
Mr. Gendron.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. I just wanted to know if this information was on the Dropbox. I couldn't find it in the Dropbox. I know that there were some hard copies here tonight, but
I sent it last week.
email it?
I sent it to the superintendent for
Okay.
inclusion.
Can we just make sure it
Yeah.
gets put in the Dropbox so we
Certainly.
have access to it? Thank you.
Thanks.
Ms. Scott.
Thank you. Just one quick question. As far as in-house suspension goes right now, I've heard similar concerns with not having enough space at the middle school level for in-house suspension and at the high school level. And Mr. Leary, my colleague, brought up how, we brought this forward, but this mandate, but it didn't come with any funding at all accompanying it. And I'm just curious what our plan is for meeting this space that we're going to need for in-house suspension at this time.
Are you talking about actually facility space?
Staffing, how we're going to handle it?
That's some of the things that we're going to have to look at as a district and make some recommendations to the committee. So that's what we're working on with staff right now.
Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Mr. Leary noted a litany of unfunded mandates since we've been sitting here together. Education evaluation, this particular 222, these are all mandates. In the whole scope, we only have in-house suspension that's funded at Lowell High School that has that particular safety net or that valve where kids are referred. We have some small programs, some staff shifting in our middle schools. Sometimes our allied artists, if there's extra time, have sections of the day. But you're absolutely right, Ms. Scott. This is something, as you're looking at implementation, what do we do? Is there a way for us to take existing staff and shift it? Is that the mission of what we're doing? It does come another one of those mandates. So that's what we're going to be looking at. And I'm very proud of the work that's been done by my Department of Student Services and our legal team that's really looking at getting advice from the practitioners, because those are the day-to-day issues. Putting the ed evaluation piece on top, because everybody's saying educational leaders, awesome, we believe in that. This discipline, very detailed discipline policy, does actually go ask for more than we're already doing, and we are pretty aggressive. So, yes, you're going to see recommendations on how we're going to do this work and what the capacity of our buildings are when they are pretty well stretched after the work that's mandated for a district like Lowell and any district in the state. So we're working on it. You will see more information as we get closer to budget and some advice as we go, because we just don't want all these needs. Again, will come down to this committee's prioritization skills on what's going to be the most important on our mission of keeping our schools safe and that learning continuing.
Mayor Elliott.
Thank you. Just briefly, a couple of questions, Madam Superintendent. Or how many cases or students are we talking generally on an annual basis? Is it a static number? Is it, do we see an increase? Do we see a...
So suspensions?
Yes, I'm sorry.
So we've been tracking, because that's one of the things that we need to do as part of, but it's also good practice to look at suspension data from year to year. And at present, this year, as of December 1st, I think was the last time that we looked at our district-wide data. Our district-wide data had not reduced. Suspension data and discipline data had not reduced from the year prior. So it was, in some instances, it was higher than it had been. So those are some of the things that we'll be sharing out with our schools for them to look at their specific data, school-based data, and then ask some critical questions about what they can do to support students. Again, one of the pieces is building those alternatives in so that schools have some viable alternatives to suspension. And right now, not all of our schools have that in place, so that's some of the work that we have to work on, not only trying to implement Chapter 222, but actually looking at what we have in place that's successful, looking across the state at what's working in other districts, and then trying to replicate some of those for the District of Lowell.
So at the high school, there's options, through you, Madam Vice Chair. At the high school, there are options to go to these alternative schools and other institutions. At the middle school, there are not. There are no resources. There's no. At this point, there's.
So for the middle school, the only option, we do have the alternative programs.
Right.
So we have the Bridge program, and we have the Cardinal O'Connell program for our middle school students. The therapeutic programs are based on a child's IEP, so that's specifically driven by the IEP process. So other than that, there are no in-school suspension programs and in-school suspension teachers hired for our elementary and middle schools.
So could I ask, do you know what that number is on an annual basis for the suspensions?
I could get that for you. I know that we were up. Attorney Ortiz, can you recall? I hate to put you on the spot, but I know that when we looked, we were in the...
Overall infractions were above. I think we had a small drop in out-of-school, in terms of suspensions were down slightly. Detentions were up. So in a sense, while the overall infractions didn't change dramatically, we saw a shift within the type of options that the principals were exercising, which is what Chapter 222 is talking about. Is there a way, is there another option than, as the mayor indicated, than sending a kid home for a lot of these behaviors? But as Mr. Leary says, and I apologize, should I be saying school committee person?
Please.
I apologize. But in light of that, how can you do that and still do it in a way that ensures safety when it's appropriate? And again, when you look at some of the videotape training and the scenarios we went through during the summer with staff, we took case scenarios and we had staff working together as groups, and we helped facilitate some of these discussions. And the problem within the law is some of these things aren't defined. So we're going to figure out as we go, case by case, based on case law, based on how it gets interpreted going forward. And we've asked for clarification from DESE. We've asked for them to provide guidance. We've reached out to DCF, and our understanding is DESE will be providing something to us when we don't know. But it's not just us that are asking. It's a lot of school districts that are struggling on how to deal with this, because we all know kids do better when they're in school. Mm-hmm. But the question is, how do we do that, and how do we do it safely? And as school committee member Conway indicated, we've been doing it in Lowell better than everybody else, going way back beyond when I was hired, when Mr. Samaras was there, and we were having these meetings. We were talking about kids individually. We were trying to figure out what to do, and school committee member Conway was part of those discussions. So when he says we've been ahead of the curve, we have been. And we're going to continue to do that for as long as we can.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So generally speaking, have we run into a lot of problems with parents knowing that 222 was in place, but we have been ahead of the curve with our process and protocol and knowing, let's keep them in school, let's keep educating them, let's not send them home where they're in a worse environment and they're not going to learn and they're going to, their lives are just going to,
Right. And
go in the wrong
I
direction.
think to the extent many parents are getting it in the sense that, for example, even though we provide for provisions for them to have attorneys and advocates, which everyone in essence has on some level, I've only had to go to 6 schools because advocates have come. In light of all the suspensions we've done, I've only had to come. My cell phone goes off. It's going off as we speak. But every principal, every assistant principal knows that if an attorney, if an advocate shows up, they call one of us and we shoot down immediately. They have that support. We've made it clear. If they want us to facilitate these hearings for them, we've offered to do that, to guide them through that process. But again, most parents are waiving the hearings in most situations because the principals are speaking to them and saying, listen, we're going to suspend your child. This is the reason why. Do you really want to come into a hearing? If you'd like to, we could do that. But the hearing's going to be on our terms. You're not going to get next week to come in for that hearing. It's going to be tomorrow. If you can't come in today, it will be tomorrow morning. And that will happen. And if you don't show up, then we will continue to go forward with the hearing as is. But we're not going to let it be dragged out because we have to balance the interest of safety along with the interest of making sure we're doing right by kids. So again, there are nuances to this, and we're looking at what other school districts do. We're not the highest in terms of the extent of what we give students rights. Some school districts give students much more rights. What we tried to do was be somewhere in the middle, because the way we're looking at it, this is kind of like a marathon. If we sprint out right away, we may not make it and we'll burn out. And we don't want to do that to our staff because they work really hard and they're doing the best they can. And we don't know if the state's going to stay that Exhibit 1, for example, whether they go too far or did they go not far enough. We're trying to keep pace. We're trying to balance all these interests so that we stay focused on the goal, which is to make sure we keep kids in school and that we keep our schools safe. And I think the assistant superintendent's been doing a great job through the school committee, through the subcommittee meetings with principals that we have, and trying to get their input and their feedback and hear their concerns. And we go to schools and we talk to them and we figure out, okay, and when you think about in school, even though that option is not in the middle school, I got to tell you, the principals have been doing a great job of using office time, of juggling staff around how do we provide some type of in-school component, even though they don't have the resources to do that. Principals have been doing it. They've been pulling teachers to do that. So many of our principals appreciate the intent of the statute and the value of keeping their kids in school, and they're trying to be creative. It's just, again, how do we help them do that in a way that's constructive, efficient, and budget-friendly to the extent we can.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Ms. Rustic?
you.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate your explanation. But I also appreciate that the standard is being set so parents know, but more importantly, that these young students know. There is a code. There's a code of conduct. I understand it's in the handbook, but that message is communicated consistently and fairly across the board because kids are smart. They're learning, and they know if they can push it a little bit further or not, and then that everyone else is watching, who's trying to cross that line. So I think that's as important as letting the parents know that, yes, they are afforded rights. However, this is what we do, and everybody gets a handbook, right? It goes home every year, and kids are going to kind of act out sometimes, but at least they know that they're going to be held accountable. So thank you, Madam Vice Chair. No more questions.
Thank you. Ms. Rostikowicz.
Thank you. Actually, I did just check, the Lowell Public Schools website under our packets that are made available to the public. The PowerPoint for the Chapter 222 presentation is also not downloaded into that. So when everything's reloaded to Dropbox for us, if we could also reload that to the Lowell Public Schools website, and folks can have a gander at it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Leary.
Just, I think to kind of put it to a rest for tonight, I'd like to make a motion that we reconvene the Students Support Services Subcommittee, and we also invite some of the staff that has to implement it, some of the vice principals, maybe some house masters, and really get down and definitely Attorney Ortiz, and have this discussion. I think in terms of the in-house suspension, as the mayor articulates, and some of the other factors that might be budget orientated. Also, in terms of what can we do to improve the system that we're in. I think one of the good things is that a lot of the stuff in the law, we were already doing before the law. I mean, we're always calling parents. That's not new to our folks in the field. So I make that as a form of a motion, and probably sometime early in 2015, we could have that additional dialogue.
So a motion by Mr. Leary to reconvene the Student Support Services Subcommittee to continue discussion on Chapter 222, seconded by Ms. Rosikowitz. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. I'd entertain a motion to accept this as a report of progress from the Student Support Subcommittee. Thank you very much by Ms. Rosikowitz, seconded by Mr. Gendron. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Moving on to the next subcommittee report. We have another subcommittee report. It's a personnel subcommittee report from the meeting of Monday, December 15th. Chair would like to recognize the chairperson of that subcommittee, Ms. Martin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So the subcommittee did meet on December 15th. In attendance from the subcommittee itself were myself, Mr. Conway, and Ms. Scott. We also had full participation from all the other members of the school committee, including Mayor Elliott, Mr. Gendron, Mr. Leary, and Ms. Rosikowitz. And from the administration, we had Superintendent Franco and Michael Cassidy, our Director of Human Resources. We had a single topic of discussion, and that was the search process for our next superintendent. We had invited the Massachusetts Association of School Committees to come and speak to the subcommittee regarding their superintendent search services that they provide. They are the professional association for all school committee members across the state of Massachusetts, and this is one of the key things that they provide as part of that, again, professional association services. We were joined by Mr. Michael Gilbert, who is their field director for this region. Personally, I thought he did an excellent job of outlining what a search process can be. I think it was reassuring to know that he would anticipate that we are well within the time frame to be able to conduct this search comprehensively and appropriately. I also think that it was interesting to hear that he would anticipate that we'd be generating probably between 30 to 50 applicants for the position, recognizing that some would not be qualified, but that we would have a solid pool, in his opinion, to choose from. Just to be talking kind of broad strokes, I think that some of the key points of discussion that we had were a structure that would allow us to use MASC as basically as the repository, so that all applications would go to them. They have an exceptionally good reputation for confidentiality, which is something that I think we all value and want to have as part of our search. Their recommended process then is that the MASC will do the initial review of applicants, ensuring that everyone meets the qualifications. That group then of pre-qualified applicants would go to a community-based committee. We would be able, as a school committee, to populate that group. Based on the information the other night, we'd be looking at a group between 10 and 15 individuals that this committee would be choosing to put on that committee, who would then do the review, conduct interviews with the assistance of MASC, and particularly with our field director, Mr. Gilbert, who would then be able to bring to us, again, a recommended number of between 3 to 5 finalists, that then this committee would go through that process of doing, once again, public interviews, which I think we've always found to be an effective model. There is additional supports that come from working, from the model that was presented to us. MASC includes as part of their package conducting focus groups. These focus groups, again, school committee will be very involved in crafting the shape we want them to take, talking about including parents, including teaching staff, administration staff, again, parents from every level. Also, I think as part of our discussions, we talked about the opportunity to bring together some of our partners and community-based organizations here in the city so that we can include special populations, make sure those voices are heard, also make sure that a lot of our larger partners that we work with can be part of this. Personally, I really welcome the idea of having those conversations in a focus group so that you can really talk about what we aspire for our district, and not be so limited as to having just a simple blue ribbon commission that is simply asking questions and getting answers thrown back, that we can really use the expertise of MASC to draw out real information that I think can help us as a committee as we craft our priorities. Those focus groups, again, would lead towards the development of our criteria for final selections and what our priorities are for the position, so that we're not only using our own experience, but we're using the experience that can be drawn from all those different conversations. I think we'd again, be working with MASC to craft out what the specifics are, how many focus groups, where they're happening, when they're happening. But they certainly seemed, from Mr. Gilbert, very open to creating a process that we would be comfortable with. Also, MASC would be able to take on the role of all the background and qualification checks. They do have the resources to do your basic, what you'd expect, your Corey checks and SORI checks, but also to do the background checks in terms of education levels and all those things, and to do reference calling for us. Again, all activities that I think it will be really helpful to have their expertise involved in. So, as we discussed it, the kind of package, and it's difficult from their perspective, they were talking about $11,000 to $12,000. I think that as a group, the committee felt reasonably comfortable with that. But the reality is that there may be other organizations that are interested in being part of this process with us. There are professional search firms that may wish to bid on providing this service for us. So I think we had a better sense from this meeting of what's available, certainly particularly from MASC, but we do recognize that we will put out that we're required, because of the anticipated cost, to do a request for bids. I believe we need to have 3. So it was the final motion of this subcommittee was to recommend to this full committee a request to instruct the administration to develop a bid process, to request proposals for supporting the superintendent search. Please feel free to make that a real sentence when you write it down. And be able to send out that bid request so that we can hopefully move forward fairly quickly.
Motion by Ms. Martin
Hard stop, yes.
Second.
Motion
Do
by
that.
Ms. Martin, second by Mr. Larry, to do whatever Ms. Martin's.
Now that's a motion.
Yes,
Whatever Ms. Martin said.
Proceed with the development of an RFP to engage the services of an organization. Proposal for a superintendent search. Mr. General.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the motion, first I want to thank Ms. Martin and the committee for bringing Mr. Gilbert and Mask to the subcommittee for us to hear what they offer. I think it would be foolish of us not to take advantage of the services that they have. These guys have done this types of searches dozens of times every year for many years. I think they're a real asset. They can be a real asset to us. There's no need for us to reinvent the wheel. They maintain the full confidentiality, something that may be difficult for us to do. in the cost, really, to me, seems like short money based on the amount of work that they do, especially when you consider that we wouldn't have to pay for advertising, which is something that we normally pay, which is close to half the cost of the service. So really, I think it's a great suggestion, a great idea, and I fully support the effort to go out to bid so that we then move forward with some type of a search team. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. General. Further discussion? Motion to, roll call. Move to approve by Ms. Martin, second by Ms. Scott. Roll call.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Rosikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
Approved, 7 yeas.
And I would submit that as a report of progress from the Personnel Subcommittee meeting.
Motion to accept the report as a report of progress by Ms. Martin, second by Ms. Rosikowicz. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed, that motion passes. The report is accepted as a report of progress. Moving on to reports of the superintendent. Madam Superintendent, Computer Science Education Week.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a report by Ms. Abrams in response to a motion by Ms. Scott requesting that I develop a plan to participate in the CS Education week of December 8th through December 14th. So it was a pretty quick turnaround to get the information, but I have to say that we learned a lot in a short period of time about coding and what is happening in our district. And the report talks about Mr. Silva, who jumped on board, and Ms. Abrams, to make sure we know what's going on at this particular time and what's involved in coding. It's a national opportunity for young people to really look at this free opportunity of a technology experience. It's really very beneficial. I would be very remiss and probably ruin Miss Abrams' Christmas wishes if she can't speak about this, because she's a coder now. So I want to turn the interesting part of this report over to Miss Abrams, because she was at the Wang School and she actually is now dominating coding, which I am well behind. So I'm going to turn it over to Miss Abrams.
Thank you. I appreciate that. This was a very exciting week. Last week in Lowell Public Schools, coding was everywhere. If you went into the buildings, it was just amazing. The thing that's interesting, I know Ms. Scott came up with this motion, but some of our teachers were already invested in this. They had already done some training last summer on how they were going to bring this into the classroom. We had one teacher in particular from the Wang School, Mr. John King, who his class was accepted as one of very few across the country to spend some time talking with a computer science executive in New York City. So on the Hour of Code, which took place on Wednesday, there was communication going on between the students in Mr. King's classroom with this high-level executive in New York City, just talking about, what can computer science do for you, and what are the interesting types of jobs that you can get from it. So when I walked into the classroom, I always like to get back to the classroom, I was just like a child. So they had to teach me how to do the coding. It was unbelievable. The thought process that one has to go through in order to really understand what's going on, to decode and be able to, I think I was moving an Angry Bird, if that's what it was, I'm not sure. But moving, it was something I was moving, I think it was, and I had to move it from left to right to up to down, and one of the students was sitting next to me, and it was a good day, He was helping me, and Mr. King said to him, I have to share this because he said, this is, my sister works at the Wang School, this is Miss Neary's relative. And he looked at me and said, oh, you're her mother. So that was not, that wasn't a good thing. But anyway, besides all that, after that, I spent some time at the Bailey School, and I just needed to see how these little students were doing this coding. It was remarkable. They were going fast and furious. They were doing some of the coding online, and some of it was something that they could do offline. In one of the, I think it was a second grade classroom, there was a student who they identified as the robot. And so what the students had to do is talk in their small group and develop a code that they would read out, and this little robot who loved it was going up and down and all around. So it was really a great experience. The kids enjoyed it. They're still doing it. I asked Mr. Silva before this meeting this evening if he had the final number of students that participated. Right now, we're up in the 3,000 range, but we have 7 more schools that have to report. So I'll have updated numbers, I guess, once we get that, and find out what school really, I mean, he was very generous in offering some new equipment to schools. So it was great, and I think it will continue, and we'll have a lot of computer scientists in the school. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Abrams. Anything else, Madam Superintendent, on that one? No? Okay. Entertain a motion to accept that as a report of progress and placed on file by Ms. Scott, seconded by Mr. Conway. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed. Motion passes. Next report from the superintendent. We have freshman banking.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is in response to a motion by Ms. Rosikowicz requesting that I work with the staff at Lowell High School to ensure access for students at the Freshman Academy to banking facilities. Headmaster Brian Martin has reported that the students do, in fact, have access to banking facilities before and after school hours. So the bank facility opens at 7:30, closes at 3, and that was what he said happens.
Motion to accept the report as a report of progress by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Leary. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next report, realignment update. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In a response to a motion by Ms. Rosikowicz, that I provide the committee with an update on the continued effort to reorganize the district special education classrooms to include timelines, rollout, parent engagement, and approximate cost associated with reorganization. We are most assuredly in the midst of this. We will have to be reporting out on a regular basis. I know we're already planning for our next student support services, and I would think this should be a standing agenda item. But here's what we've done since last July. We have asked for support for the district teams with all the newly established classes. From the work of this committee, we did add some behavior specialists, especially for special education, BCBAs by their acronym, their names. And so, in essence, they have been working. We've been looking at the new programs, giving the support systems to make sure they're successful, making sure the teaching's up to speed. In October, we have met with the Director of Special Education as well as the Coordinator of English Language Education Program, just looking at what they're planning to make sure they're continuing the plan, what makes sense. And just looking with the population, because you know, as all of us, our specialized population changes daily. And so what's going on was our plan from last year up to date, and they're looking at those changes. In November, the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Student Services developed a plan to realignment. They have had meeting with district administrators from special education. We also had a survey go out just last week or the week before that was forwarded to principals, assistant principals to get feedback regarding the realignment from last year's budget session. There's also been an advisory team. A meeting took place on December 9th. Ms. Durkin ran that meeting with principals and other administrators to get feedback to keep current. So the surveys and all of the information with staff and parents are going out. So there was a parent survey as well that went out to parents. All of this data is coming together. In this realignment plan, we intend to make sure if there's any staffing changes or any implications, that it is upfront, shared with our teachers union, shared with our teachers, but ready for as early as the February compendium, so we can look at this. And at this particular point, we have not changed the determination that would be more than a 1 year. I mean, a 2-year it might be 2 or 3 years. So that will all come out, but we just wanted to keep you abreast of the updates that are going on while we're currently. So that's it. That's all.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Ms. Martin, then Ms. Rosikowicz.
Thank you very much. I appreciate getting the update right now, recognizing that this will have some long-term impact. Looking at the surveys that will be going out, according to this week, if we're focused on both special education parents as well as ELL parents, do we have that survey in multiple languages so that we're able to get some real information from parents in a way they're comfortable?
So we're actually going to put the survey online with ConnectEd messages so that parents are able to access the multiple languages when they're conducting the survey. We're actually also going to have some outreach to our parents for the special ed piece, to our parents in the substantially separate programs, so that their teachers will inform the parents when the surveys are going out. I think Ms. Abrams can probably speak to the ELL component of that, but those surveys will be going. I know the ELL piece for staff went out today, I believe, and also the pieces for the special ed component already went out to our administrators, but will be going out to families and to the teachers by the end of this week.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rassikowitz.
Thank you. My one question was, so the surveys that are going out to parents, are those going out to both parents whose students will be affected upcoming, and also to those, or also to those parents that have kids that have already gone through a realignment?
Yes, both.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rassikowitz. Further comments? Motion to accept the report as a report of progress and place on file by Mr. Generin, seconded by Mr. Leary. All those in favor signify by saying aye. The
Aye.
opposed? That motion carries as well. Last report from the superintendent on home education.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a request of the committee of Heather Rourke to home educate her child under the regulation of home education. I recommend your approval for this request, and if this is granted, the number of families approved by the school committee will be 31, with 45 total children being home educated.
Move to approve by Ms. Rassikowitz, seconded by Ms. Scott. Roll call.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Rassikowitz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
There are no further items on the agenda. I would entertain a motion to suspend the rules to bring in, I'd like the superintendent to just discuss or recognize the fact that we got a nice big check there for Verizon today. There was doing his event at the Rogers School. So entertain a motion to suspend the rules by Mr. Conway, seconded by Mr. Leary. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed, that motion carries. Again, the purpose, Madam Superintendent, would you like to, I'll get the check if you would like to give a description.
If you hold the prop, I'll tell what
The
happened.
mayor wants to take the money.
This morning, we welcomed the Verizon organization to the Rogers School, where we provided a overview with our children from the STEM Academy provided their essays about what they will do when they were able to build robots. And it was I said to the mayor, Verizon will be in love with us by the time they leave here. They run it very well. The Stocklosa School was also there. Their teachers who wrote the grant spoke on behalf of this grant and how it's going to be from farm to table. And so they are going to even cook and get into all of the resources of Mill City Grows, along with this expansion of they're doubling the size of their outdoor garden. So these extra funds, Ms. Susan Lynn from Project Learn was there, who was the grant writer, and we really had a good time. So we just wanted to share that with the public and thank Verizon, but thank our staff, our principals for being there today. It was fun.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. What the superintendent didn't tell you was Verizon was extraordinarily impressed with the district, and I want to commend you, Madam Superintendent. Verizon made a commitment to spend, to contribute $100 million to the president over, I guess it was a couple of years. There were 80 grants awarded this year throughout the entire country. Lowell got 2 of them. What was most striking from Verizon is that most communities submitted 1 grant application. Superintendent and her staff submitted 3. We got 2, and I thought that was very impressive, and just shows that, you know, we go the extra mile. So I thought it was a wonderful, good news, good piece of news.
I'm just wondering, Mr. Mayor, what happened to the third one? Why don't we give that one too?
Next year.
This is
We'll be
a
coming next year, but
this is a nice little Christmas present, I think,
really
for
is.
everybody here in Lowell Public Schools, and it's a testament to the effort that Project Learn and the benefits that they're bringing to the city. So I think you know, that's a measure of why private organizations like that can make a big impact on the city of Lowell.
right. I mean, you're right. I mean, testament to Susan Lynn and the fact of bringing somebody in to, you know, to write grants, and that will pay dividends, and it is paying dividends. So, good work, Mr. Conway, bringing that motion forward. Further discussion on this? Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Hearing none, this will be our last meeting before the holidays. I want to wish everyone Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays. Is it Happy Hanukkah?
I think so.
And so many others. Entertain a motion to adjourn by Mr. Conway, seconded by Mr. Gendron. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed, that motion carries. This meeting stands adjourned.